This is Musical Talk.
Musical Talk.
The UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
Musical Talk. The UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. We're coming up to our 500th episode of Musical Talk, and more importantly, our 10th year being a podcast that you all enjoy listening to. So I thought for the next couple of weeks, what might be nice is if I go through the archive of some of the past episodes of Musical Talk and just remind you of some of the wonderful things we've discussed, some of the wonderful people we've talked to, some of the wonderful shows we've seen, and all that kind of stuff. So each week I'm going to be playing you an episode that I am very proud of and that has been very popular with everyone, or that's been an important episode or an important interview or something like that. So this week I'm going to be replaying the episode Attend the Press Junket of Sweeeney Todd, number 57, released 9 years ago when the Sweeeney Todd film came out. I was invited to Claridge's Hotel to meet Stephen Sondheim, the late Alan Rickman, Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, and lots of other people involved in the Sweeeney Todd film, and Tim Burton as well. So I'm going to play the episode for you now. So sit back and enjoy this piece of musical talk history as we re-attend the press junket of Sweeeney Todd.
Welcome to this week's episode of Musical Talk.
Hello, I'm Nick Hudson, and welcome to a very, very special episode of Musical Talk. Now, we haven't announced this episode, we've kept it a bit quiet. If you notice on the website, it says this episode is to be announced. Well, I am now announcing that the Musical Talk today, and by that I mean me, went to the press junket for the Sweeeney Todd movie. So, in this episode, you will be not treated to one interview, but you will be treated to interviews with Tim Burton, Johnny Depp, Ed Sanders, who plays Tobias, Jamie Campbell-Bower, who plays Anthony, Helena Bonham Carter, who plays Mrs. Lovett, Jane Weisner, who plays Joanna, Richard Zanuck, Walter Parks, and Laurie MacDonald and John Logan, who are the producers. John Logan also wrote the screenplay. But first, I'm going to hand you over to one of the greatest musical theatre writers of all time. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stephen Sondheim.
Well, movie musicals have not been very popular up until recently, when a couple of them have suddenly broken through, like Chicago. But over the last 20 years, movie musicals have not been in great demand, and so I think it never occurred to anybody. And Sweeeney was not the kind of big hit that made movie studios clamor for it. It lost all its money on Broadway, and not all, lost half its investment, and it's only over a period of time that it has become sort of more popular and more done with revivals and things like that. And as you probably know, it was a big flop in London. London critics hated it, and which was ironic because it was sort of my love letter to England. And so I think it's the combination of those things. The first person to ask to do it was in fact Tim, about 20 years ago, as some of you probably know. He came to see me and said he wanted to do it as a musical. I said, wonderful. And that was the end of that we had a nice conversation, and I never heard from him again. He got, as we say, interested in other projects. And then a few years ago, during the Sam Mendes did a production of Gypsy in New York City, and we were having coffee during the recording session, and during the recording session we had a cup of coffee, and Sam said, have you ever thought of Sweeeney Todd as a movie? I said, well, actually, Tim Burton once came to me, but otherwise nobody's ever approached me about it. He said, I'd like to do it. I said, great, let's do it. And he got hold of John Logan, the screenwriter, and they started to work it out together. And then Sam got frustrated by casting. The people he wanted to cast, for one reason or another, didn't come through. And so after a couple of years, Sam said, I give up. And then I don't know I don't actually know exactly who it was who brought it to Tim and said, are you still interested? Anyway, Tim obviously said yes, and that's what happened. So the bulk of the time was merely the people weren't doing movie musicals, and the few movie musicals they did do were big smash hits, and Sweeeney was not one of those. So nobody approached me except, as I say, Tim. And then Sam did about, whether it's 4 or 5 years ago.
Next, Stephen Sondheim was asked what he looks for in a director.
Obviously, if a director approached me to do a show as a movie, and it was a director whose work I didn't like, I would say no. But that has not arisen because not many directors have asked.
Next, about Tim Burton's role.
I knew it from the time he came to me 20 years ago that he really loved the story. And that was the first thing. That he likes the story and he likes the musical. And he's not a particular fan of stage musicals, but something about this spoke to him. And I absolutely trusted that. He didn't have to be persuaded about the story. He didn't want to change the story. He wanted the story just the way it was. And all the changes that did occur have to do with small changes within the structure of the story. But he didn't want to change the character, he didn't want to change the ending, he didn't want to change anything about the telling of the tale. And that's enough. I was also enthusiastic about some of his movies, but the real point was that he loved the material.
Then we asked Stephen the difference between film and stage.
The thing about the stage is you can virtually do everything on the stage that you can do in movies. It just depends on the audience's imagination. You can transform. You can go from the Tokyo airport to a hospital interior on the stage just as quickly as you can with a cut in a movie. It all has to do. You don't bring in tons of scenery, but you do it through suggestion. So offhand, I can't think of anything that couldn't have been done on the stage the way it's done in the movie, except for things like the blood. The blood on the stage shocked the audience. It was compared to what's on the screen. It's that much, but the way it was used and the fact that it was there. When Sweeeney slits all the throats of the people in the second act, when he's singing the ballad to Joanna, and he's coming. Now it was a razor this size with a little blood thing in it and a little spouting, but it was their imagination that made it just as big as the blood on the screen. But you have to have more blood on the screen because the screen is not about the imagination. The screen is repertorial. The screen is newspaper photography. That is real. Doesn't matter whether it's a fantasy or not. You are looking at reality and real people, and therefore you have to have more blood. But the effect of the amount of blood on stage was the same as the effect of the blood in the movie. And in fact, in John Doyle's recent production, there was no blood on the people themselves, as those of you who saw it, that just people poured buckets of blood, a bucket of blood into another bucket of blood, and the audience still had the same illusion. And when he finally got to the judge, there were merely more buckets of blood. And so it amounted to exactly the same thing as when Sweeeney kills the judge on the screen.
We asked what surprised Sondheim in the new film version.
The middle of the epiphany when he cuts away into the street and he's threatening everybody in the world. That was a surprise, and I think a brilliant surprise. What we did on the stage, the equivalent of that was, there was a little section of the stage, and I had Todd literally threaten the audience. That is, say, he was threatening the world, and then he suddenly jumped down, and he was as close to the audience as I am to this gentleman right here. People who had the misfortune of getting those seats. I mean, I thought if there's anybody really elderly, we are in serious trouble, because Len Cariou knew how to play murderous anger. He's the guy who played Sweeeney originally, and when he came down and said, "You, sir," and it was as if he was going to break the fourth wall and leap over the stage, because it was that close. This little part of the stage was built out to this little section of the audience on stage right, and it was just as scary. But what Tim did in the movie is something you can't do on the stage. Stephen has a huge love for London, so he asked him to go into a bit more detail about that. Usefulness, the city of London, that really comes from Chris Bond's play. Chris Bond's play is a study in actually it's partly about the class system. And the interesting thing about Bond's play is that all the upper class characters speak in a kind of blank verse. It's almost iambic pentameter, and all the lower class people speak in demotic English. The city of London, therefore, in the play, is a character split between those above and those below, as the lyric says. One of my collaborators, a man named Bert Shevlov, who was an Anglophile. He's the one who wrote A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And in fact, with the money that he earned from Forum, he moved immediately to London and lived here for the rest of his life. He introduced me to the puzzles in The Listener, the old Listener. And I became fascinating because I love puzzles. I love cryptic puzzles, which did not exist in the United States. Those of you who do British puzzles, they never existed in the United States until, I'm happy to say, I wrote them for New York Magazine, and then now they're very popular there. But the listener puzzles I like because they were gimmicky, and I like the Zimny's puzzles in The Observer. And I've been a subscriber to The Observer ever since, because even though Zimny's died, I got in the habit of subscribing to the So I've been au courant a bit with what goes on in popular culture and theatrical culture, and etc. in England since I was 27 years old, which is the first time I actually came to London and just loved it. So I'm afraid that the Anglophilia has no deeper roots than the Zimny's crossword puzzles and the listener crossword puzzles. But I got habituated, and the first time I came to London I was 22, but that was sort of passing through. The first time I stayed in London was when West Side Story was done here, and I just, I don't think I've had a year since when I haven't been here at least once.
Stephen was then asked for his general opinion on the film and if he thought the film suffered from not having singers playing the main roles.
I found the film stunning and was quite surprised how stunned I was, even though I knew what was going to be done. But see, because I was not around during the actual filming, I was only here for the recording sessions. And so outside of seeing sort of rushes, which I had seen a lot of, I had never seen sequences put together. And since I received the rushes on a computer and they often were slow and sort of thing, I didn't see all the rushes because there was no fun. So in that sense, the film was a kind of fresh experience for me. And I must say, I was knocked out by it. I was surprised also at how knocked I was. And no, I've always preferred actors who sing to singers who act, and all the shows I've ever done, and which I get some flack for and some resistance from colleagues for, because I'm interested in storytelling. I mean, what I like about songwriting is songs used to tell a story. That's why I don't write songs apart from theatrical pieces. I'm not interested in writing songs, qua songs. I like songs that are part of a dramatic texture, and therefore I like the scenes to be acted. I want to follow the story, and that means you lean on the actors. And so I'm used to what I would call untrained singing. If there had been anybody in the film, if any of the leading roles had been cast with a professional capital S singer, then it would have been out of balance. I think it would not have worked so well. But they're merely actors who are musical, all of them, with the exception of Laura Michelle, who really, has had a career on the stage here as a singer. And but even she tamped down her voice, and she has very little to sing in the movie. But if she'd had any big aria, then it would have required that everybody else either come up to her or go down in terms of the quality of the singing, of the professionality, the sheen. You can tell a professional singer from a non-professional singer. So they're all of a quality, and that's why I think it works so well.
I asked Stephen how one goes about adapting a score from the stage to the screen.
Yes, adaptation in terms of cutting certain sections of songs out where there wasn't anything active to film. The trouble with most musicals that have been done for the screen, in fact, all the musicals that have been made from stage musicals, is that they are essentially films of the stage musicals. And the songs are used as songs. What Tim wanted, and Logan and I also, was that if a song does not lend itself on stage, you can sit and listen to a song being sung for 3, 4, 5 minutes, because that's the convention, and you can enjoy it because it's taking a moment and expanding it, or, as Bert Shellwell said, savoring the moment. But on the screen, at least I, as a movie fan, I want the story to be told, and I want it to go swiftly. So that meant that we had to excise certain parts of the songs and excise certain songs. So I would look towards, if Tim or Logan said to me, could we get from this point to that point more quickly, I'd find a way of compressing or omitting or eliding so that it would still maintain the shape of the song, without having to... I could give you numerous examples. There's a whole middle section of Green Finish and Linnet Bird, which is cut. There's a whole middle section of Little Priest, which is cut. But unless you know the score, you wouldn't know it. I like to think you wouldn't know that anything was cut. I might be wrong, but I think you wouldn't know. And I'll bet a lot of people who only know the score superficially will not notice those omissions. But those are the things I worked out. So the movie could be told, as you all saw, swiftly. It's an hour and 45 minutes long, approximately, and it tells a moderately rich story in that time and yet people sing, which is when you sing, it takes longer than when you speak, and yet, for my money, it does not seem attenuated. It doesn't seem as if it's a taffy pull.
Stephen was then asked if, when the actors had to audition in front of him, if he relished his power upon them.
No, I've spent my entire life relaxing actors and saying, "Don't, please." I'm by nature generous. I hate the idea that people feel that they're auditioning, and all I'm there to do is to help them be confident. The whole thing about dealing with people who have not sung professionally before is giving them the confidence to sing. It's as simple as that, and as hard as that. To give somebody confidence. They have confidence in acting, but they have very little confidence or no confidence in singing. And the only way you can do that is to support them and just rehearse them and gentle them. So I get no pleasure whatsoever out of their discomfort.
Stephen was then asked about the style of writing he uses for his shows.
Well, I change my style for each show. There are foxes and hedgehogs, and I'm a fox. I go. I don't dig one place deep. I scour the field, and the style for Sweeeney Todd is entirely different than the style for any other show I've written. But I would claim that was true of each show I've written. That I'm a firm believer in content dictating form and style. And if you're going to write company, then you write that kind of score. If you're going to write Pacific Overtures, you're going to write that kind of score. And if you're going to write Sweeeney Todd, you write that kind of score. So there are other composers who would use the same style for each. It's neither good nor bad. It's who you are as a composer. I'm an eclectic, and I always have been.
We then sat down with two of the film's producers, Walter Parkes and Lloyd MacDonald, and also John Logan, who wrote the screenplay and also produced the film. They discussed their involvement with the film.
Laurie and I met with Steve Sondheim, I think, in 2002 originally, and had conversations. At the time we were also running the studio, and for whatever reason, Steve felt comfortable that we would love the baby like our own and do whatever we could to make sure that it came to the screen the right way. And within weeks, I think, right. John, Laurie and I have collaborated many times since, but we really got to know each other or cut our teeth together on Gladiator. John, I feel, really wrote the draft that kind of became Gladiator and got the movie made, and had been a man of the theater and a lover of this play, and quite extraordinarily, I think, came to us.
And I think on bended knee and said, "If I don't write this, I'll die."
Yes.
It was actually, in fact, Gladiator, which we all collaborated on, which made us feel that we had the right to take a shot on such a, unusual and potentially difficult material.
Speaking for me and Laurie, we had run the studio for several years, DreamWorks, and it was a very good run. And there's a connection that people have to Sweeeney Todd that really does border on the fanatic. I mean, people who love the play in a very, very deep way. That's something, the three of us share a lot of things. That was one of the things I think we all shared. But it isn't an obviously commercial venture. I mean, it's a very risky thing to do. So it really, for us, as producers, it kind of took the confidence that we derived from a couple years there of things working and working together on Gladiator and seeing how well that worked to say, something, we can try this. We can try to do this the right way.
Right, and also, everyone at the early stages in this, Walter, Laura, and I, we all saw the original 1979 Broadway production of this, and it has stayed with us since then, and have such affection for and respect for the work of Stephen Sondheim and Hugh Wheeler and Chris Bond and Hal Prince, the people who made that original Broadway production. That was paramount to me all the way through. That from the very beginning, we were all talking about the same beast and talking about it with respect.
Absolutely. I remember, you started your whole process with an almost like academic analysis and study and breakdown of the original play. I mean, I think you became a scholar of the
that was many years ago. Yeah.
No, because there's such extraordinary invisible work John had to do. Because no one wanted to reinvent the wheel here, at least on a screenplay level. We wanted to honor, as John said, this amazing piece of work that has only grown in stature since its inception. And I think it's always been thought to be the most important score of the second part of the 20th century, and it's such a great story. So anyway, to answer your story, that was a very long process, and there was quite a long process of trying to find different ways of getting the movie made, and eventually we parted ways with Sam. And at that point, I remember a conversation the three of us had, and it really was, well, there's all these versions of Sweeeney Todd, which are going to be hopefully we'll respectable, and we'll go out there and we'll put on film this wonderful piece of work, and it will find its little audience. And then there's this other version, and that would be a version with Tim and Johnny. It's like suddenly, oh my Lord, it could have a larger cultural impact possibly just because of what they bring to it. And also the fact that there's such a perfect kind of correspondence between Tim's sensibility and what the sensibility of the play itself is. So we were lucky enough to engage in conversations with the various representatives, and yes, Tim came in. And quite honestly, Tim is such a total auteur that when you make a movie with Tim, you hand the baton to Tim.
From the very beginning, the first discussion we had with Tim Burton, we talked about the blood. And one of the unforgettable things in the stage show is the first stage slitting. You remember this, the blood arcing across the stage, the light hitting it. We talked about the blood from the very beginning and said it would be dishonest, immoral, and unethical to treat this as anything other than murder and to try to shy away from the blood.
We then sat down with the delightful Miss Helena Bonham Carter, who talked about how she first discovered Mrs. Lovett aged 13.
Ooh, I saw it when I was 13. When I first heard it, I was 13, and I loved it. I loved the score, and it was before it had come over. It was in America, New York, and I loved it.
Contrary to common belief, Helena has to audition for any film that she and Tim Burton do. We asked her what the audition process for this film was like.
He came to me and he said, look, over dinner once, I am going to do Sweeeney Todd, which we both knew we loved. It was one of the things one of our mutual passions was the musical. I remember when we were, getting together, we played it. We caught it over Sweeeney Todd. But, so he knew that he also knew that I've always wanted to learn to sing. So he said, look, how about this? I think you're right for that. I want you to be considered, because you shouldn't be not considered just because you go out with me. However, you're going to have to audition along with anybody else who wants to, because I'm going to audition anybody who wants to go up for it because they have to sing, And so he said, it's up to you. And I said, of course I'll go for it, because, if I don't get the part, at least I'll have learnt to sing or, had the voice lessons that I've always wanted to do anyway. So I went to a singing teacher who's fantastic.
You had the voice lessons in order to prepare for the audition?
Yeah,
and the composer to
and Sondheim,
yes.
that was the other thing. Tim didn't. He said, okay, and on top of that, I don't want to have ultimate approval. It's Sondheim who will ultimately cast. Yeah. So it was scary. I just had no choice because I so loved Sondheim, and I so loved the part, and I loved the material and the music and the lyrics, and he's a genius. So I can't lose. It's a tall order anyway, learn to sing in 3 months. So I thought if I don't, I'll have a good excuse if I don't get it, So I did it, and I was amazed the day when Sondheim, even Tim, I auditioned for Tim on video, and he didn't talk about it for 5 weeks. That was tough. But then he auditioned other people, didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it. It was like the elephant in the room for 5 weeks, and then finally he said, you know what, I think you are right, and you can sing this part. He then, luckily, sometime a week later, saw them and he agreed with Tim. And also, I didn't want to be cast if I was not up to it. I would have hated it. And I didn't want it, it would have been horrible to film, and horrible for me and horrible for us. So we just had to go through that.
We asked Helena what first attracted her to the musical.
I think, to be honest, the music. For some reason, viscerally, the music and there's some such beautiful tunes, frankly. And there's a yearning and there's a sort of romance to it. And humour. And there's no Pretty Women and Joanna, and I love Little Priest too. I just loved the music, and it's so heartrending.
We asked her about Mrs. Lovett as a character.
Well, what I loved about it, and what's is because she was so complex, and she could have so many different colours, and you could still play it in billions of different ways. That's always the exciting thing with a part where it's well written, is that so many different ideas occur to you. Do
you think she's the baddie in this
story? I don't think she's a baddie. I think they're both victims in a way. I mean, she's the most amoral. She's got no excuses for what she does. He's obviously innately a victim given what's happened to him, so you can kind of justify his killing. You see a reason behind it, a powerlessness, and he goes off the end. And she's amoral, and it's not quite explained why she's quite so innately she's pretty mad and delusional herself, and that's her tragedy. She's in love with somebody who doesn't even notice her.
We asked about the difficult musical staging that this film has.
You had to rehearse it and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse it and practice it, because it's different, because on stage you have to do it all in one. On film, you know it's going to be cut around, but because it's cut around, you have to do it in continuity. So you have to really learn it back to front to know when you're going to pick up the rolling pin, when you're going to smash the the dough. It's all written into the music. The pie making is written into the rhythm of the music, and he actually, all the offbeats are smashing the pastry but it all had to be decided which bit was I going to roll the pastry out when I was going to, and which beat was going to be what, and you obviously had to do it immaculately the same every single time you did it. So it's hard. It was hard. It was a lot. I know that song. I could sing it in my... No, the rhythms are all over, but they're fascinating, and once you start looking at it, there's a reason for every single breakup of rhythm. It's not all over the place. It's really easy to learn in a way, in some ways, because it's justified by its own logic and the thinking behind it. And there's always a character, a reason for why, it goes up on it, or seems perverse, or there's an offbeat, and it's all there. Like in that West Pie, it's like a minute and a half you're in, and you kind of know her already. It's like, bang, she's somebody who just... chatterholic. It's like a monologue.
We were then joined by the 14-year-old Ed Sanders, who plays Tobias. I asked him what it felt like to be singing a great musical theatre standard.
It's an amazing feeling. It's quite scary, but I'm very happy with how it came out in the end. But definitely the musical side of film, I think it's definitely having its time at the moment. I think it will be very good.
I spoke to Jane Weisner, who plays Joanna, and Jamie Campbell-Bauer, who plays Anthony, and we were talking about the differences between England and America and what they like best about America.
I tell you, I really like the sweets. Well, apart from their chocolate. But yeah, I like the accent. I like the lifestyle. I don't know. I like my lifestyle too. I like the British way as well.
Do you think London has become very similar to New York?
No.
So just shoot you down. Yeah, I think London. London's kind of where it all began, really.
London's an incredible place.
The grass is always greener, as they say.
Yeah, probably.
I can't live in Hollywood. I can't leave London.
It's too good.
I don't know. I think LA's kind of fake. It kind of obviously it is, and it doesn't. You've got to play the game, but I wouldn't want to play the game 24/7.
I spoke to costume designer Colleen Atwood and asked her how difficult it was to research a Victorian barber.
It was tricky. No, there were photographs later, but a lot of it was sort of cartoon, sort of caricature drawings. So I kind of took that and then took a little bit later research and then sort of made it up in between, because there's a lot of research about barbers before 1800, like funny cartoons of them because of the wigs and all that, and then this sort of yeah.
We were then joined by the delightful Alan Rickman, who shared his thoughts on making the movie.
It was great to do the movie because I was working with great filmmakers and great actors and a great script with great music, so it was more than fun, it was a privilege.
We asked him if he'd ever sing again on stage or screen.
Well, let's wait and see if I'm asked. But yeah, why not? If maybe it'll inspire Mr. Sondheim to write something maybe specific for the movies.
We then asked if there are any films that Alan would like to see adapted into a musical.
I can't think of one offhand because, usually that's the whole problem with them on film, is that they're so much of the theatre that it's very hard to move them. But I thought what was wonderful about this is that it naturally moves to the screen because everything is so interior, and it's about people's thought processes and about a very dark world. So it's not happy-go-lucky leg-kicking choruses or anything. So it's a movie, that is not trying to be something else.
Did you ever see the original Broadway or West End production of Sweeeney Todd?
Yeah, I saw it only once. I didn't see Angela Lansbury do it originally, but I saw it a couple of years ago with Patti LuPone and Michael Severus in New York, where they were all playing musical instruments as well, and it was amazing, but it's like a completely different piece of work. I don't recognise what we've done as opposed to what they did.
We asked Alan about the influence that American actors have in England and vice versa.
I think that those barriers are all over the place these days. I think it's very easy to try to make up some so-called truth about that, but I don't think any of it's true anymore. You now have, in the last couple of years, 3 classic English characters. If you say that 3 archetypal English characters would be Bridget Jones, Jane Austen, and Queen Elizabeth, you have them played by a couple of Americans and Australian.
And Sweeeney Todd, of course.
Yeah, and Sweeeney Todd. But you have an American playing, of all people, Jane Austen. So I think all of these things should be screwed up and thrown away, and we should let English people and American people dive into the mix, and if you can do it, you know. What's happened is that we've got better at doing American accents and they've got much better at doing English accents, so it's, you know, it's all moving around now. So you have people like Kate Winslet playing American parts as often as she plays English, and vice versa, and Johnny Depp playing a lot of English.
We asked Alan which character is more loathsome, the judge he plays in Sweeeney Todd, or the character he played in Dangerous Liaisons.
Maybe Sweeeney Todd himself, or maybe Mrs. Lovett, or... It's not the way I look at it, I suppose. I can't argue with the way you look at it, but I'm looking down the other end of the telescope at, as you say, other work as well. So it's all part of, and also the last thing I do is say I'm playing somebody horrible. I'm just playing this person. Who is it? What do they want? What do they think? Where do they come from?
How do you think the movie will play for today's modern audiences?
As the jolly Christmas option.
With a bit of singing and dancing.
I honestly don't know. I mean, one would hope that the world has not so, fucked itself that it can't go to see a movie that is dark and complex and takes them somewhere they don't know about. If all people want to do is pay money to go to the movies and have all their preconceptions reaffirmed and come out of a movie or a theatre or a book or a piece of music or anything else with everything still in place and everything exactly the way it was when they went in, then we all have the world and the culture and the art that we deserve, and we will blow ourselves up.
We mentioned how important it was for the small movies trying to make it in the business.
I agree with you. Thank God for the little independent movie, unless it becomes part of general culture and it's made available. It's already, you can, if you live in New York or LA or London, you're living in luxury land in terms of choice, but you live in the backwoods of the north of England, 100 miles to go see a movie.
We asked Alan about the strikes and mentioned the possible forthcoming SAG strike in July.
I'm a solid union person, and it's an honourable fight, I think. So all I know is that there are no movies without scripts, and there are certainly no good movies without scripts, and so the writers deserve. It's ludicrous how little respect they give, and it's criminal what's going on. So and it's only about greed, and so good luck to them, really, I think.
There are rumours that Harry Potter is going to be turned into a musical.
Oh, really? Who's shoving that one around? Listen, you can go and find Harry Potter porn sites on I'm not kidding, and people are proud of it. It's a don't go area, so anything's possible. Harry Potter the musical after Harry Potter the porn site.
And now we bring you to the star of the film, Johnny Depp, and the director, Tim Burton. The first question we asked Johnny was how is it that he's able to take so many risks when it comes to films, and also what is it about the film that inspired him so much?
I think it's probably a combination of or something in between hard-headed and ignorant. You know, in terms of taking the road that I've taken, you know, but there's an easier one out there for sure. And then this, you know, Sweeeney Todd. First of all, that's one thing, you know, that's one sort of little arena. But you know, Tim comes into the picture before all that. You know, anything that he would ask me to do, I'd jump at the opportunity.
Except a ballet.
No. I actually would.
You're not going to do it.
I would try. I mean, I was familiar to some degree with the earlier versions, the stuff that that seen the video of Angela Lansbury's and listened to it quite extensively, and I'd seen the more recent production of it, and just thought it might be, certainly a great opportunity to try to find a new Sweeeney, a different Sweeeney, kind of in a weird way, I suppose, like a slightly more contemporary in the sense of almost like a punk rock Sweeeney.
Johnny went on to talk about the nerve-shredding experience of singing these very famous songs.
I think I was probably more frightened than anyone, except maybe Tim. No, he was amazingly, he really trusted me with it, I was very lucky that he allowed me to, because I didn't have a process really, in terms of singing. I never sang before in my life, so I had to kind of find my way to it, and thought it was important that I, keep it very, very low key, and so yeah, I initially did these demos in my friend's garage studio, and because I didn't know if I would be able to hit a note, to be honest. I really didn't. I wanted to make sure I could do it for Tim, and then when we did, I think the first demo we cut was my friend's, and I sent it to Tim, and crossed my fingers and waited for the outcome.
Next, we asked Johnny if he thought the role of Todd's revenge was an act of loneliness as a victim, or was it a violent reaction that became more violent?
It's probably all of that, layer by layer. One thing leads to another. I think initially, victim. Victim who dreams of revenge becomes obsessed with that dream of revenge, and then from there it turns into, like a compulsion, obsession, madness, and that's the only thing you have, the only thing that drives you, the only thing that keeps you alive is the idea.
Tim Burton spoke about Helena's role in the film.
I thought it was important that, because I'd never done anything like this before myself, so, and it's quite a difficult musical to do, and, like in the stage thing, it's a hard role, all of the roles are hard, and I just didn't want it to seem like I was just giving the job to my girlfriend or anything. So I really was probably harder on that for that reason. And I just wanted to make sure that it was basically she was really, really right for it, which she was and is. So yeah, I probably was a bit harder on her than others for the reason of just wanting to really make sure it was right.
Many may draw comparisons between this film and Edward Scissorhands for obvious reasons. We asked Tim Burton and Johnny Depp about this link.
For me, it's only the fact that we did that movie and we did this movie. I mean, and we're not lost on the sharp instrument angle. But, the thing about this character, which I love, is different from that, is that, we did that a long time ago, and we were probably I certainly was much more optimistic and, which that character sort of represented. And now the Sweeeney character is a much sort of more interiorized, darker character, which I love. And seeing Johnny do both of those things was really amazing for me to see, because I think this character for me is one of my favorite characters he's done, just because I love the interior brooding quality of the character, and then you put that with him singing, and it just created to me a really amazing new thing for me.
Similarities in the sense that to Scissorhands, maybe even Sleepy Hollow and Ichabod Crane, in a way of characters who were kind of very much like we was talking about, living inside their own head kind of thing. Edward was a bit more innocent than that, to be aware of it. I think there was only one moment when you saw Edward get angry.
Yeah. No, this guy's just angry the whole time.
There might be one moment when you saw Sweeeney smile.
Yeah, it's like if Edward Scissorhands, went into a major depression and got for several years.
We asked Johnny, who I must say at this conference donned a very handsome goatee, if, in the making of this film, he learnt the value of a good shave.
You know what? No, I didn't. I really didn't. I've never really experienced that full-on thing, because this is a full beard for me. This is a lumberjack look for me. I'm hiding behind this. So yeah, no, I didn't. But I can definitely appreciate it, because when you get in there with into the chair with a complete stranger, and they lather your face up and brings incredibly sharp instrument towards your throat. So yeah. It's very frightening. It is.
I tried it once, and it was really frightening to have a complete stranger have a razor at your throat. You don't even know who he is.
Yeah.
It's just the sound of it. It's frightening in a way.
We asked Tim Burton how Sacha Baron Cohen was cast.
Well, I mean, it was after Borat came out, and I was, he came in to audition. He brought in the score of Fiddler on the Roof and basically did all of Fiddler on the Roof in the studio. And no, he was great, because I admired him, because he could have gone off and done a whole bunch of different stuff, but he chose to do this, and that was it was great that he did it.
God, I'd love to have seen that. Wow.
Oh yeah, it was. I wish he had a camera, because he literally went through the whole score of Fiddler on the Roof. It was the whole book. It was great.
We asked if the difficult blending of genres, being a musical and a slasher, how that has an effect on Tim Burton's mind and whether it keeps him awake at night.
Well, I mean, it's always a risk. I mean, of course, I remember when I first saw the show in London back when I was still a student, or basically, I didn't know anything about the musical, and I remember seeing the show, and when Joanna came, these two ladies, these very proper British ladies, were sitting in front of me, and they were kind of chatting throughout the show. Mm-hmm. And then when Joanna came up and the blood started spurting across the stage, they both stopped and paused for a minute, and one leaned over and said, "Was that really necessary?" But in fact, it was necessary, and I've seen other productions of it where they tried to be a bit more politically correct and skimp on it, and it really lost something, because I mean the show is based in those old Grand Guignol horror theater melodramas where they had buckets pouring out over the stage, so it just felt like that was true to the spirit of what the show is, it was and is, and it's over the top too, so we never felt like it was it's more of an emotional release than it is kind of a reality thing in this movie. So and the studio, they were cool about it, they accepted it, they knew it, because they knew that what the show was, so there wasn't but any movie is a risk, but it's nice to be able to do something like that where it doesn't fit into either musical or slasher movie category, kind of his own category.
Sweeney Todd in the film is a very depressed character, and we asked Johnny Depp, are there any moments in the film where Sweeney expresses moments of happiness?
I don't know. I haven't seen the film. But, I mean, the funny thing is that, the majority of the filming was like a laugh riot. We were constantly kind of, it was a great time. It was a great experience. It was great fun. We laughed like fiends.
I mean, I'd say the humor, from my point of view, from his character, comes from how just serious he is and just how single-minded he is.
Thanks.
The relationship he has with Mrs. Love and anybody else, he's pretty much on one track. And, there's something weirdly humorous about that, but I guess it depends on, what you think is funny, really.
For Tim Burton and Johnny Depp, we asked each what they get out of the other.
Well, I mean, I'll say, he just tries anything. I mean, the fact is that he's not a singer. He's musical, and then he would try like one of the hardest musicals ever to do. It is like, it just says it all. He's just willing to go out there. And believe me, something I learned is singing is very exposed, especially if you're not a singer. It's a very exposing process, and I just really, anybody that can do that can basically do anything, and so for me, it's just a artistic pleasure to see somebody try different things and actually achieve it and achieve it beyond your expectations. So
with Tim, I mean, since the first second that we met, all those years ago in that little cafe, coffee shop in Los Angeles, for me there was a kind of instant connection on a lot of different levels. I mean, the most obtuse levels of where this kind of weird fascination or understanding of the absurdity of things that were totally, perfectly acceptable in the 1970s, for example, like macrame owls and resin grapes and, fake fruit on your, plastic fruit on your kitchen table that no one thought, twice about. So that there's that weird connection right on the spot. And ever since then, I have only wanted to, as an actor, as a friend, but I mean as an actor, give him as much of as close to what he wants or what I think he wants. Any actor's job really is to just give the director options. Just give him a bunch of options. So I funny thing is, for example, when I go into a movie and I'm preparing like a character or whatever, and I start getting these kind of these ideas and so they come to me and begin to incorporate them into the character, I feel good about it myself and have hopes that others will feel the same. But when I'm working with Tim, as I'm coming up with a character, before I'm thinking about what I feel about the character, I'm thinking about him. I'm just hoping that I won't let him down. So he comes first, and then I come in there.
Another thing is he's great because he doesn't like looking at himself, which is great for me. I mean, you don't have to spend after after take I'm going to go look and see, oh, that's not a good he's just completely open to like, okay, whatever, and I don't really care to look at myself or want to look at myself. Just does a great job, and believe me, that's a huge issue for me to not have that kind of, certain kind of vanity of like looking at yourself and stopping. It kind of keeps the process going, keeps it vital, and that means a lot to me, and I think the crew and everybody else. They get into the spirit of like just doing it, and not sitting around and.
We asked Tim Burton if the unique visual style in the film represents his view on the world.
Well, I mean, our inspiration for this were these old horror movies and all. So, we wanted to make the characters look like that. Johnny and I always talked about like old horror movie actors and all. So it was an opportunity to do that. So you set the world in that, and so it's for the flashbacks because that was the, you just try to treat it like the story. That was the happier time in his life. So. It's a bit more lurid, the color, sort of the opposite of flashbacks, which usually are more desaturated. We sort of inverted that because that seemed to be more appropriate to the telling of the story. And then, her fantasy we put a lot of color into because that's her fantasy of a wonderful life. And so, you just try to use color as an emotional character, and that's why we made those choices.
And finally, we asked Tim Burton what it was like not to work with Danny Elfman for once.
Well, the score was already done. I mean, that's one of the reasons I did this. But I think Danny would appreciate this score because, Sondheim, when we first talked to him, he said he wrote the score as like a Bernard Herrmann score, which it was interesting. When we recorded the orchestra, and you don't hear the vocals, it's really like a great old-fashioned movie score. So, it had the same kind of strength that Danny, I usually get with working with Danny, but, there was such a wealth of of music and themes in the that Sondheim wrote that it was all there right from the very beginning.
I'm here with my friends Paul and Heather. Say hello.
Hello.
Who have seen the Sweeney Todd film and are about to share their thoughts on it. Paul, what do you think of it?
I thought the Sweeney Todd film was a masterpiece. Actually, I thought it was an extraordinary fusion of visuals and music and incredible performances by everyone. I thought Johnny Depp was amazing in the movie. I thought Helena Bonham Carter was fabulous. It looked incredible. I loved it. It was one of the best films I think I've seen this year, actually.
Hello?
I have to admit that this is the first time I've ever seen Sweeney Todd, and I haven't been familiar with the story up until now. So when I first saw it, I thought it was very dark, very disturbing, but I also thought it was incredibly beautiful and touching. I thought it was one of the greatest romantic tragedies I've seen in a very long time.
And how did Johnny Depp live up to your standards, Paul?
Well, I've always thought that he was an incredibly diverse actor, and I think he takes risks as an actor.
The gnocchi, please.
Johnny Depp loves gnocchi, and apparently...
That's mine, thank you.
Apparently he also loves club sandwiches as well, but yeah, I think he takes amazing risks as an actor, and he carries himself off as an actor rather than as a big movie star. And I loved his performance in this. I thought his singing was fine. I really liked his singing in the movie. What about you, Heather? Do you think his singing was good?
I loved his singing in the film. I didn't realize he could sing on such a level that he did in the movie. And
mixed vegetable.
Yes,
and the chips, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Paul, you can have your fries that are going to add to your heart attack one day soon.
Heather, by the way, she's really a pain in the ass.
Hurt you.
Yeah. Good. I'm looking forward.
But anyway,
you are editing this, right?
Maybe. I think this is quite funny, though.
I'm really sorry about Paul. He's very obnoxious and says very inappropriate things.
If the word, excuse me. First of all, it's inappropriate is the word.
I said inappropriate.
You said unappropriate.
I said inappropriate.
We'll play it back.
You should listen.
She's American. She doesn't know what she's saying. Carry on. And I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to our guests, Stephen Sondheim, Walter Parks, Laurie MacDonald, John Logan, Jane Wisner, Helena Bonham Carter, Jamie Campbell-Bower, Ed Sanders, Colin Atwood, Johnny Depp, Tim Burton, my friends Heather and Paul, all the staff at Claridge's Hotel, all the staff at Paramount, all the staff at Warner Brothers, and a special thank you to BroadwayWorld.com. And thank you to listening to this episode of Musical Talk. We shall see you next week. Bye-bye. Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. It's amazing how far we come, especially as regards audio quality. I was just listening to that and thinking, my goodness, we've advanced with technology. Thank you very, very much again to everyone for the past 10 years for supporting Musical Talk. We're not going anywhere. You've got Foss's wonderful Edinburgh series coming up. It is that time of year. So I'm still deciding what episode to put out next. If you have any favourites that you remember and want and think the world should hear them again, if you have any favourites that you remember and want the world to hear them again, do let me know. Tweet me at Musical Talk or email me at nick@musicaltalk.co.uk. And do visit our website at musicaltalkpodcast.weebly.com. I hope you enjoyed that amazing discussion. That day was a true delight for me to be in the presence of not only Stephen Sondheim himself, but all the other people. And I really hope that you enjoyed hearing that, if not for the first time, again. And I will speak to you very, very soon. Hope you have a lovely week, and ta-ra for now.